live stream. Give a couple minutes for folks to hop on. Just turned 8:30. Unfortunately, wasn't able to get on any sooner. This kind of is what it is. Not my usual backdrop. I don't have my mixology apron on. I don't have my hat on. It's all right. And I'm trying to adjust this a little bit. Hey, Terry. I might have an opportunity to address some questions as we go. It's kind of all depend on how things go, because I'm working with a cell phone, and so the text and everything is really small. So hey, we got 4 folks on. Good to see everybody that's on so far. Pardon me while I not have some incidental product placement going here. So this is different. A lot of times when I do this and when I film, I'm actually in the entryway, the back entryway to our house, where I've got everything set up. We've got that nice wainscoting or wainscoting, depending on how people decide to pronounce it, in the background and everything. I do have some new light stuff, so that I can adjust the light in there when I'm filming in there. The room that I'm in tonight, though, is actually my bathroom, believe it or not, and there's a reason for that. It ties in with what we're going to be discussing this evening. And the lights that I've got in here are actually pretty decent. So yeah, this is the shower curtain behind me that's going on. As far as things that you are going to need to make what we're making tonight, you are going to need to have lemon juice. You are going to need to have gin. A dry gin would probably be a good way to go, and I'll be showing you what I'm using. The original recipe calls for Contreu, although Grand Marnier, if that's what you've got, that'll work to be able to try out this beverage tonight. That's actually what I'm going to be using. The original one calls for a dry vermouth style alcohol that's just not being made anymore. So there's a couple different options. You can use a dry vermouth, though, instead. That's what I'm going to be using. Let's see here. So we've got the dry gin. We've got Lillet Blanc is one of the ones that you can use. Something or other Americano is another one that you can use, or use a dry vermouth like we're using tonight. Contreu or Grand Marnier, either one of those. And then you're going to need lemon juice, and you're going to need some absinthe. But the absinthe it's in the background. Okay, it's not a main part of what's going on with things. Take another sip here. This is really weird to be drinking an adult beverage from a can like that and trying to keep the label all covered up and everything. But it just kind of is what it is. Now, because this is a beverage that has citrus juice in it, in past episodes we have talked about stirring. We talked about the James Bond thing with shaken, not stirred, which normally is not a thing the way that he has his martinis, because it doesn't have any citrus fruit in it. So we would normally, with those, we would actually stir them in a stirring mixing vessel. But since this one actually has citrus in it, we are going to shake this. So you're going to want to have a shaker. And the way that today it's done, you'd use a couple of different gates. Well, you'd use a gate. You'd use this strainer. And then as you are pouring from your shaker, you're actually going to do a closed gate pour through one of these cocktail strainers, just to make sure that you don't get any ice chips in it. If you go to a bar that makes decent craft cocktails, and unfortunately this kind of fits into that category now, even though this is actually pre-1930s, but it's first documented in the 1930s. they're going to use those. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. You can actually use both halves of your Boston shaker and pour it through and just try to keep the ice out. That'll work for you as well. All right, I'm going to set that off to the side and we'll get going here. So the question tonight that we've asking is, if I can remember the order that I have this in here, what do the bee's knees, bathrooms, Halloweens, and lemons, how are those four things connected? So we're just going to jump right into it. We got to skip backwards in history, which makes sense because we're doing drinking through history, although even right now is history. We're going to go back to a time frame, 1920 to 1933. The 1920 to 1933 here in the United States was a unfortunate time frame known as prohibition, which fortunately got repealed. Now, when I say that, I don't mean that everyone should be going and getting sloshed and things like that. That's not what I'm saying. The point was, it was a very good thing that we got through that time frame and moved on to where we are now in history, and as far as what was taking place with alcohol. Now, being responsible for alcohol consumption, being responsible with how we advertise those things, and who that alcohol is going to are things that we really should be responsible with. All right. It's really important that when it comes to alcohol consumption, we be smart with it. We understand our personal limits, and also to think long term. You know, these different situations that we find ourselves in, how will that affect us as people? How does that affect people's reputations? How does that affect relationships and things like that? So these are things that we should be keeping in mind when it comes to alcohol consumption. So when I say, thank goodness that we finally were able to repeal prohibition, I'm not saying just go out and lay waste to everything type of a deal. During that time frame, mixology kind of took a nosedive in the United States, but it did continue on in other places. In fact, our beverage for tonight comes from this book. It's called The Savoy Cocktail Book, and this actually came from Harry Craddock of the Savoy Hotel in London. Now, in here, and this is first published in 1930, which means the beverages that are in here are taking place prior to that, during the time of Prohibition. He's got beverages in here that you can make that have got alcohol in it, and he's got other ones that don't have alcohol in it, and he's got ones specifically notated in here for countries that are affected by Prohibition. And in there he says these recipes are ones where you are going to be able to, without too much difficulty, be able to track some of these things down. Even during Prohibition, alcohol is kind of making its way through. Now, during that time frame, there was a thing that people were doing, which today we kind of joke about. It's called bathtub gin. Now, let me dispel the misnomer that people were not distilling gin in their bathtubs. That's just not possible. But the bathtubs of that time frame were of a size where people who were able to somehow smuggle in things like grain alcohol or neutral-based spirits that were not good quality, by the way, if you were to mix them up in a production style that you could still conceal and be able to sneak around, they were using bathtubs or bathtub-sized vessels to be able to do that. Now, a lot of the alcohol that wasn't necessarily being smuggled into the United States, but was being produced during the time of Prohibition, was not good stuff. So in these bathtubs, or these bathtub-sized vessels, what they were doing is these neutral, and I'm going to use that term kind of loosely here, neutral spirits that are going into these bathtub size and literal bathtubs, they are adding other things in there like botanicals. Things like juniper berry juice is going in there. One of the reasons why the gin that we have has the flavor that it's got is because it's actually got juniper berries. It's a part of it that goes into it. I don't remember if it's during or if it's post the distillation process. So they're adding things like that in there to kind of mask the flavor of what's going on. And a lot of the beverages that are coming out during that time frame, during Prohibition, where they're able to use this bathtub gin that's being produced, they are adding ingredients to help mask just the nastiness of the flavor of this alcohol. One of the things that they end up using is lemons, because lemon juice is actually pretty doggone strong. So if you are using this bathtub gin that you've got access to, and you can use lemon juice in there, it actually helps mask how terrible this alcohol actually is, okay? Now, so bathtubs are in bathrooms, and that's actually where I'm at right now. I'm filming from my bathroom for this Prohibition-era beverage that we're going to be having here in a little bit. So we've got our lemons, and we've got our bathrooms. Then we've got... see, bathrooms, okay, so, yeah, Prohibition's taking place, we've got these different things, mixology's kind of taking a nosedive, but fortunately people like Mr. Craddock, Harry Craddock, documents in his book, these are beverages that you can make if you are in a prohibition-affected country. Where you can make these different things. Now, while Prohibition was taking place in the United States, you could still imbibe. There were different ways that you can do that. The wonderful sound of my drain because the dishwasher is going on in the kitchen, so that's fantastic. What you could do, you could book a day cruise, or you could go on a cruise for the weekend, because as long as the ships were so far away from the shore, it was outside the jurisdiction, so to speak, where you could still enjoy alcohol. So if you were in a place in life where you could afford to go on one of these, you could still go and you could still consume alcohol that was otherwise illegal in the United States because it was legal, because it was far enough away from the shore. This was one of the ways that they circumnavigated things as well. During this time frame, gin becomes one of the predominant... hey, Dale, nice to see you too, man. Yes. Yeah, looking forward to hopefully see you this summer, man. Gin is kind of one of the big alcohols that's on the scene during that 1920 to 1933 time frame in the United States while Prohibition is going on. Winston Churchill, post that time frame in London, keep in mind in London they don't have this Prohibition era going on. He's drinking his martinis. He calls it martini. At this stage of the game where he's consuming it this way, it's really not a martini, which has, at this point, we've gone from a Old Tom style gin to kind of a Plymouth style gin. Holland is kind of in there as well too, and we're going from a less sweet to a drier. By the time we get to him, it's a dry gin, and it was said of him enjoying his martinis. You pour the gin in, and then you make a nod to France. France is where your vermouth is being done, and then he would drink his martini. He was basically just drinking gin at that point, so it really wasn't a real martini. And that dude consumed a lot of alcohol over the course of the day at that stage for him, along with a number of cigars. There's a group that I follow called Whiskey Tribe, where they had a guy come in who's kind of does a drinking through history type of a thing, but different. And he was talking about Churchill, and they tried to go drink for drink with Churchill on an average day, and they weren't able to do it. I mean, Churchill was, despite being a very stout individual, just who he was as a man, apparently he'd built up quite an alcohol tolerance. But I mean, a world war is going to do that to a guy after a while. Carl, you and me both, man. We're going to drink one here shortly, actually. So we got Prohibition going on. Now, the bee's knees, right? So that was another one of the things in there. So we've covered our lemons. We've covered bathrooms. Now we're going to talk about Halloween and what that has to do with things. When we think about Halloween and how this relates to things, is we got ghosts and ghouls and goblins and all that kind of stuff. And in contemporary times now, very popular TV franchise, we've got The Walking Dead. We've got corpses. My neighbors, and I'm not going to say in which direction, not that they'll ever see this, deemed it appropriate to make a human-shaped object inside of garbage bags duct taped together hanging upside down from their tree. So things like corpses is kind of can be considered part of what's going on with Halloween in today's modern context type of a thing. As time goes on in history, and this is taking place for quite a while actually. If you've ever heard the expression "the hair of the dog," or hangover cures, that's actually what this stems out of, and this beverage stems out of that. And the name of the beverage that we're doing tonight is the Corpse Revivor number 2, not the first one, which was kind of popular to begin with. Corpse Revivor number 2 is the one that continues on. It fades out, and then when people started bringing back craft cocktails, and a lot of, thank goodness, American bartenders and bartenders all around the world actually, looking more into mixology and what life has to offer, they would come up with these different cocktail cures, and they came across this one again, and they brought it back. The Corpse Revivor number 2 is the most popular of that. So we've got everything all linked together now. We've got our bathrooms, we've got the, oh, I forgot about the other one. We'll have it all connected together. We've got bathrooms connected now, we've got Halloween, we've got lemons, and the last one is the bee's knees, all right? Now the bee's knees, believe it or not, which means the best, basically, and I use this expression at school, teachers have used this with me. Lots of us use this expression, but we don't hear it as much as what we would have, say, 2-3 decades ago. The bee's knees is actually a Prohibition era slang term. That's where it comes from. It comes right out of the Prohibition time frame. In fact, there was a Prohibition era drink called the bee's knees. And as I talked about how with this bathtub gin, they would try adding different things to make mask the flavor of this terrible alcohol that they're trying to make. They're adding things to that to make it palatable. And the bee's knees is one of these Prohibition era drinks where they were trying to do that. The bee's knees contained this bathtub gin. It had honey, and I'm forgetting what the third thing is. Doggone it. It's probably vermouth or something like that. So things that are a little bit stronger, the honey is going to come out along with the lemon. Oh, it's actually just honey, lemon, and it's gin is what's going on with that. So those three together, and it was called the bee's knees. It makes sense because it's got the honey in there. The honey, there's enough in there to hopefully mask that terrible, terrible flavor that's coming out of the bathtub gin, along with that lemon, which is pretty powerful. Okay, so we're talking about that hair of the dog thing. Corpse Revivor, this is supposed to be one of these hangover cures. So the hair of the dog, hangover cure, someone's been out partying that night, gets up the next morning, and they need to function. They're not feeling so great, right? There's kind of myth and legend, and people try this. I've never tried it myself. I've never deemed it necessary to try it. Where we have these hangover cures, which consisted of yet another alcoholic beverage. And the Corpse Revivor, in other words, you're feeling dead, it's going to revive you. That's one of these hangover cures. Now, Craddock mentions in here, and I'm going to read it to you, for the Corpse Revivor, I'm too far, Corpse Revivor number 2. At the end of the instructions here, he says, 4 of these taken in swift succession will unrevive a corpse again. And when I tell you what's all in here, it'll make sense. So this is the way it was historically. They say a 1/4 wine glass of lemon juice, okay, not that big of a deal, and this is going to be masking the flavor of that bathtub gin. A 1/4 wine glass of Quina Lillet. Today, Lillet Blanc would be one of those. A 1/4 wine glass of Contreu, which is basically an orange sweet liqueur. We got a 1/4 wine glass of dry gin, a dash Pernod, and then shake well and strain into a cocktail glass. Using the way that Jerry Thomas, who we've talked about in the past, he's kind of the father of what's become modern mixology. He gives us that 1862 barkeeper's book, basically, which we've talked about before. If we use kind of what Dave Wondrich translates these into, a wine glass is roughly 2 ounces. So if we do half of a half, that gives you a 1/4, right? So if a wine glass is 2 ounces, half of that is 1 ounce, half of that is half an ounce. That would be what all of these are. Today, the way that we make them, the way that we are used to consuming alcohol now, we are going to actually up that just a little bit by 1/4 ounce, and we are going to use 3/4 of an ounce of all of these in the beverage. All right, so this is going to be our Corpse Revivor number 2, where we've just upped the dosage a little bit based upon the way that the modern American palate is now and the way that we do mixology. And 4 of these will probably knock you down, because you've got 3/4 of an ounce, 3/4 ounce, ounce and a half, plus an additional 3/4 of an ounce is what? That's 2 1/4. 4 of those, that's a lot of doggone alcohol that's going on there. This is a gin sour drink. It falls into that category, the Corpse Revivor number 2. So let's hop into it. All right, so we're going to start with our lemon juice. I've got my lemon juice already pre-squeezed in here. I've got my jigger. I'm going to put in 3/4 of an ounce. I'll bring it up here so you guys can see. This is different shooting this in a bathroom. Alright, so we're going to put that into the main part of our Boston shaker here. We're going to set that off to the side in here. Now let's do be 3/4 ounce of Contreu, or if you don't have that, Grand Marnier. That's what I'm using tonight because I don't have any Contreu, but we're still in that orange liqueur category where it's going to be close enough. If this is what you've got, you're going to be able to, reproduce this anyway. So 3/4 of an ounce of this as well. 3/4. In she goes. Now I get to switch some of these bottles around. Now we're going to put in, this would be the Lillet Blanc or the Cobana Americano or something like that is the name of another one that's within the vicinity of what that was back in the day. We're going to use a dry martini. Or not dry martini, sorry. That's the name of the brand is Martini and Rossi. We're going to use a dry Vermouth, 3/4 of an ounce. In she goes. And then the last thing, we're going to be using a dried gin. In this case tonight, I'm using Beefeater. Beefeater is a pretty good all-around dried gin. I do enjoy Hendrick's. Doug Teakle II, it's one of our AMM brothers. He gifted me a bottle of that at Nationals a couple of years ago. I was doing a historic beverage college. I really enjoyed that. So Doug, thank you so much. Kim and I have enjoyed doing different things with that. For this though, we want to use a dry gin, and so that's what we've got here. Now, Leif, there's supposed to be Pernod in there. Pernod is actually Absinth. We're going to cover that in just a second. So now what we're going to do is we're actually going to shake this. Drain some of the excess water that was in this. So I'm going to go and pour this in on top of the ice. I'm going to let it sit there quickly. I'm going to show you what we're going to do. I'm going to take my glass. Now you can use a coupe or something small like this. This actually is from my friend Brandon and Jessica, or Brandon and Jess Lewis at their wedding. This was kind of a party favor. So I snagged one of these because it looked like some of the historic glasses that I didn't have, so that's what I'm putting it in tonight. Now what we would do with this, Pernod was kind of one of the top absinthes at the time, and we'll talk about absinthe at some other time. We're actually going to kind of rinse the inside of the glass. Now I haven't brought the whole bottle in here because I actually keep a dropper like this for different tiki drinks that I do. And what we're going to do is we're basically just going to rinse the inside of the glass. So I'm just going to do a couple squeezes worth of the absinthe in there. And what we're going to do, we're going to swirl this around a little bit, and then we're going to twist this sideways, and we're just going to slowly rotate the glass. Now as you do this, you're going to be able to see, not necessarily a film, but you're going to see evidence of the alcohol washing the inside of the glass. You just need a little bit in there. And then with the rest, we just toss it out. So we've just bathed the inside, okay? We're getting the aromatics from that and just a hint of the licorice flavor that comes out of there. All right, let's go ahead and shake this up. It's gonna get loud for a second, I apologize. All right, it's nice and cool. All right. So what I'm gonna do, got my strainer here. We would normally go through here, but since I'm holding this up so you can see it, I'm just gonna full gate this. Full gating is when we push that all the way, and we're gonna see how this works out here. Kind of banking on the fact that this is gonna keep any ice chunks out. I'm gonna stop there for us. Now to garnish this, what we can do, we are going to take ourselves from the lemon before we squeeze it. We're going to take us off a piece like that. Now what you're not going to be able to see me do is I'm going to fold this in half and shoot those oils towards this. All right. And then you can put it on the front edge of your glass so you get the aroma of that, or another thing that you can do is just put it right inside the drink like that. Let's give her a shot. Now here's the thing about this. One of my colleagues, I was talking to her about making this, and she goes, Leif, that sounds cool, but I'm just not into gin. And that's all right. You have no idea that there's gin in here. You cannot taste the gin at all. Yeah, you have no idea at all that there's any gin in here. The lemon juice, at those equal proportions, 3/4 ounce of lemon juice, 3/4 ounce of your dry gin, 3/4 ounce of your dry vermouth or Lillet Blanc, and oh shucks, would be your Contreu, 3/4 ounce for your Contreu or your Grand Marnier. It's pretty balanced, but it's very lemon forward. So if you think about this, remember this is the Corpse Revivor. This is what someone is going to ask a barkeep in the morning, and a lot of times this is going to be before 11 a.m. or whatever. There's an interesting thing that I'll read in a second in reference to the Corpse Revivor #1 that he leaves as a note in there. So this is going to be in the morning when a person's got that hangover. You've got the citrus, a pretty bold citrus is coming through. It's not overly sour, but it is definitely a gin sour beverage. But and this is what makes the sucker dangerous. And it reminds us of things like a tiki beverage called the Zombie, where Don the Beachcomber, or Ernest Gantz was his real name, well, two of his real names anyway. They talk about when you would order that beverage, on the menu at Don the Beachcombers, it would say that you're only limited to 2, because there's a whole bunch of alcohol in there. This is kind of a predecessor to that in a way, not in as far as the same flavor profile, but just the function of it, right? You know that this is an alcoholic beverage. You saw me pour the alcohol in, but the alcohol is not strong at all, you know. So for them to say 4 of these in a row will make it impossible to revive the corpse. It's just going to set you back where you were before when things were going. Carl, good question. I can kind of pick up some, but then again, I'm smelling this lemon peel right here. If I don't have the lemon peel, if I don't garnish it, I pick up that anise or anise flavor or aroma more than what I do with the lemon, which is another reason why there's a lot of Prohibition-era drinks that's got this lemon because it covers up that nasty alcohol that they were trying to produce here in the United States at that time. Kim noticed a difference in one that I made earlier if I dropped everything down just a little bit. Let me take another sip here. I'm not getting much of the anise flavor or licorice flavor at all on this. It's a decent beverage. It's crisp. It's refreshing. It's not overly sour, and really, you're not noticing whatever alcohol is in here, the way that it all works together. And that was one of the things that they were trying to do with these Prohibition-era drinks. One of the challenges was that they were trying to mask whatever that bathtub gin was in the back. So you've got this, the Corpse Revivor #2, and the Corpse Revivor #1. Another one is the bee's knees, and that's where we get that expression. It comes straight from the Prohibition era, which means the best. The Halloween aspect, we're dealing with corpses and dead things. This is the Corpse Revivor. This is bringing you back to life. And we've got the bathroom that we're in right now, that bathtub gin that's being produced. We've got all four of those things connected together in the Corpse Revivor. Now, this is what Mr. Craddock says for the Corpse Revivor #1. The Corpse Revivor #1 had a quarter of Italian vermouth, a quarter of apple brandy or Calvados, half of brandy, shake well straight into a cocktail glass. He says to be taken before 11 a.m. or whenever steam and energy are needed, which is a good thing that I'm a teacher with a conscience. So there's that. Again, it's that hair of the dog. It's that hangover cure type of a thing to hopefully revive a person and bring them back. The lemon definitely comes through. You catch that the most. You know that's not the only thing that's in there, but like if you are a person that does not enjoy gin at all, this is a gin beverage that you'll be able to tolerate. This is one that you're not going to mind. You have no idea that there's gin there at all, had it not been for the fact that I told you that there's gin in here. Now, and this one frustrates the dickens out of me. I'm going to attempt to dispel some myths about our little friend right here. Forget about seeing the green fairy. Okay, the green fairy is just a load of crap. All right. So we've got our absinthe here that we've got in the bottle. This is what ended up happening. All right, to give you a little bit of context with things like Pernod, which is one of the more usual absinthes that we have available to us. There is a point where there's some major issues with grapes, as in the kind that used for making wine. And as a result, there wasn't a bunch of wine available. But these other alcohols did come on the scene, like absinthe, which became quite popular, partially because you didn't have access to this wine that you had before. And it really took off. And as the vineyards began to not rebuild, but they were able to start producing more and more of these wine grapes for the making of wine, wine didn't have the traction that it once had, which created a problem if you want to have a running business where you're a vintner, right? You are a person who's producing wine. And there became these stories about people going mad because of all of the absinthe that they were consuming, and the wormwood does terrible things to you. Well, yeah. I mean, if you're drinking like a fish, of course it's going to do bad things to you, type of a deal. They tracked down a situation where a guy went to a cafe. Okay, now keep in mind this isn't a cafe in the United States, right? I don't remember if this is in France or where this is at. He goes and he orders a beverage. He orders like 6 beverages, and 1 or 2 of them happen to be absinthe or contain absinthe. He goes home. He drinks some more. He's in an absolute drunken state. He ends up killing his wife and his kids. And this kind of became the poster child of the evils of wormwood and this evil absinthe and all this kind of stuff that vintners and winemakers in the area really latched onto and promoted. We got to share this to be sure that we're keeping people safe type of a deal. And it took off like wildfire. So much so that places like the United States, they banned absinthe, and it lasted an incredibly long time. Now, they came up with something else that they used in tiki-era drinks. We're talking like 1930s, 1940s, until we were able to start having absinthe back again, called Herb Saint, that they used in place of the absinthe. But people just ran with it. Okay, and the green fairy and hallucinations and all this stuff, which is just a load of crap. If you are seeing the green fairy, you could accomplish the same thing if you drank too much wine or literally anything else. Now, I'm not saying this as someone who's an advocate of everyone should have absinthe. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we're talking about marketing and things like that and what people did with that, right? You can experience a lot of these similar things if you are imbibing way beyond what you should, which is why it's important that we be responsible with these things. All right? For some people, they might go, it seems interesting, Leif, but I just don't see that happening. I don't see that being an actual thing. And all I'm going to do, and I'm not being political when I say this, I want you to take a look at the past 3 years of your life that you've experienced and ask yourself if anyone ever took something and ran with it, regardless of where you are on the political scale. It's not too far-fetched to understand how people like wine producers would do this with something like absinthe, which suddenly took center stage because they weren't able to produce, and then it became a favored thing. And they did what they could to try to bring people back and buy their product, which wine's never going away. It's just never going to. It's a lot easier to produce wine than what it is things like absinthe. But anyway, just dispelling some of those myths when it comes to absinthe. As long as we are doing all things in moderation, right? And we are not getting ourselves blitzed like that guy who consumed so much alcohol that day, and one or two of those beverages just instantly happen to have absinthe in them. We're going to be all right. You know, if we keep in mind moderation with what we do, we're going to be all right. So just be mindful of that. Understand what your limits are. I would encourage you as well, and this is something that Mrs. H and I do. We will do a dry week every quarter, where we will go an entire week without imbibing at all, just to see if maybe some problems have popped up that we haven't known about. While it's been a while since I've done an episode of Drinking Through History with you, I haven't stopped researching or enjoying liquid research, as Mrs. H and I refer to it. So there's a fair amount of, on a consistent basis, we will enjoy these different historic beverages. And if one doesn't keep an eye on that, sometimes problems pop up. So something for you to consider, maybe every so often. Maybe you do a dry week or something like that. I've got a brother in the AMM who will go an entire year. He'll alternate back and forth. He'll do 1 year where he can imbibe, and it doesn't mean he's getting blitzed or anything like that. But then after that year time frame, he'll do an entire dry year. That's one of the things that he does. Kudos to him. He just wants to make sure everything's all right. So good on you, man. I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot. We do it on a quarterly basis. Just something to consider, right? Enjoy these things in moderation, type of a thing. So there we are on that. We've got the Corpse Revivor #2. Halloween, we think of dead bodies and stuff like that. Lemon comes in because this is one of these things that's masking the god-awful flavor of the bathtub gin, which isn't being stilled in there, but they're taking these neutral-ish spirits, adding things like the juniper berry juice and other things to help mask the flavor. So we've got the lemons in there. We've got Halloween covered with that. We've got bathrooms because that's where our bathtubs are for the making of this. And the other bee, the bee's knees. Bee's knees, which comes straight out of the prohibition, which simply means the best. So if you think about it, it's kind of like Mai Tai, which means out of the the expression that was made after Victor Bergeron shared that beverage with his friend in 1943 or 44. They said, Mai Kai Akaroi, which means out of the world, the best. So the bee's knees and the Mai Tai kind of mean the same thing, which is kind of cool. So I'm going to give you a chance here. We've still got some folks that are watching. Does anyone have any questions or comments at all about what I've talked about tonight or making this beverage or anything like that? Awkward pause he's doing, waiting to see if there's any comments in the comment section. Nope, that's all right. No worries. So anyway, folks, hope that you've had a fun time hanging out with me for a little bit tonight. Sorry it's been a while. I'm hoping to do maybe some more of these live streams. I've got other things that are partially edited and other ones that haven't. Life has just gone nuts, unfortunately. That's just what it is. Terry, thanks, man. Appreciated hanging out with you tonight, too, even though it was virtually like this. Carl, I'll see you next week. Both me and Mrs. H will be heading to the NAVC, North American Voyager Council, gathering outside of, it's in the vicinity of Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. Oh, hey, Doug. I'll hopefully see you in a couple days when you come on down. So, yeah, I was looking forward to seeing all my friends in the NAVC, a lot of you face-to-face, which will be kind of nice. Some of you I've only seen interactions, and then maybe last year when we did the, I saw all the faces on the screen when I got to do the historic beverages talk for that. So, yeah, I don't remember how to end this. Yeah, no, actually, I do. Hope you've enjoyed the time we've been hanging out tonight. Hope to do this again soon. And I'll look forward to the next time that we get the chance to together enjoying Drinking Through History. Have a good evening, everybody.